Qualified monism, you're just explaining why there appears to be different minds, why there appears to be locality of mind. But in fact, according to an idealistic monist and a qualified monist, ultimately we're one mind. We're all the same person. Okay, let's move on. And this goes back many years, right through the Vedas in India, for example. Okay, next slide, please. Now, so far we've talked about monisms in terms of unifying some kind of substrate or reality. There could be spiritual or metaphysical, idealistic monism, okay, where everything is one kind of spiritual kind of mind. Physical monism, on the other hand, everything's one kind of physical substrate, every kind of mind. We can also talk about neutral monism, still about oneness, but a neutral monist does not care whether or not that reality is physical or metaphysical, spiritual. Okay, they don't care. To them, it's just packaging. It's just semantic packaging. And these categories are meaningless for a neutral monist. They still care about everything ultimately being one kind of thing, but they don't want to categorize what that one kind of thing is called. Okay, so that's where things get a bit strange. A Zen Buddhist tends to be a neutral monist. Even though they're considered spiritual people in terms of the community, but they try and see a world that fuses the spiritual and the physical, yet still see the one true reality behind it all, whether it's through the spiritual or the physical. That's kind of a Zen Buddhist kind of idea. That's technically a neutral monist kind of idea. Now, neutral monists spawned the earliest, in some ways, the earliest psychologists in cognitive scientists, William James being chief among them. He invented both functionalist psychology and functionalist philosophical perspectives. We're going to talk about William James a lot throughout this course because he's contributed so much to cognitive science. He started out as a neutral monist. He didn't care if he wanted to call the ultimate reality spiritual or physical, but initially, because there's nothing else for him, he was okay with the idea of oneness. And then he even stopped caring about oneness and then talked about functionalism. He invented functionalism to go beyond neutral monism, to be even more agnostic as to, or more neutral as to, if anything is even ultimately one kind of thing or not. Okay? So neutral monism is comparable with and leads to functionalism. Okay? The only difference between neutral monism on the one hand and functionalism on the other hand is that neutral monism still believes in oneness. Functionalism does not even believe in that. Okay? So let's go to the next slide, please. Here's a weirder form of monism. You might say it's almost like idealistic monism. It can encapsulate things kind of like pantheism, God across, or panentheism maybe, God above and also across. Panpsychism, the inner private mind is the psyche. Okay, some people call that a soul, especially if what we were going to call a substance dualist. They would say that we're talking about a soul when we refer to the inner private mind, the psyche. But whatever you want to call it, the psyche is an inner private mind of some kind, but pan, across. The inner private mind across all different kinds of realities in a unified kind of way. Again, from Greek times. Okay, panpsychism. This should be number 4 monism. If not, don't worry about the numbering too much, okay? Just go through the slides later and just keep track of all the differences and subtypes. Panpsychism. So here's the idea that there's some pool of kind of like spiritual consciousness, okay? One kind of pool of mind or stream of mind. And then each mind locally, like my mind, my brain perhaps, and your brain over there, gets a scoop, kind of like an ice cream scoop from a giant bucket of consciousness. We get our own scoop. Yeah, we get our own piece of the consciousness stream. Okay, our own scoop. It seemed like with the big, a big ocean, right? You can think of the ocean of ultimate consciousness, and we're all drops in it that form the giant ocean of consciousness. Same kind of idea. That's panpsychism. But panpsychism gets very weird because any kind of mind can have a non-zero amount of a psyche inside. That includes a calculator, that includes your phone, that includes a rock. Might even have a non-zero amount of, let's say, even consciousness. That's a very controversial thing to say. But even a rock can have possibly consciousness. But where does it end? Kind of concept. have consciousness. The United States of America is an integrated place with lots of nodes forming a bigger kind of mind. It's a networked region. Is that also a mind? Is the United States of America conscious in a non-zero amount? Where do you draw the line between one thinking mind and another thinking mind from this giant pool of consciousness? Who gets the scoop, or what gets the scoop from the giant bucket of ice cream of consciousness, of the ultimate reality, of the ultimate mind? So panpsychism can get very weird. Okay, so for panpsychism,